At the time that I'm recording this, it's July the 19th of 2020. And even before Tiger King came out, we have been in the press now over 5,000 times. And typically in a year, we'll be in the press anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 times now. And almost all of those are positive articles. There have only been, I don't know, maybe 3 negative articles prior to Tiger King. Of course, now everybody that sees what they saw in the way that I was portrayed in Tiger King thinks that I am somebody totally different than who I am. But it's interesting to go back and see the articles that were written in the past. And this one is particularly pertinent because this was written on September the 21st, 1997. It was in the St. Pete Times, and it was, who was it that wrote this? David Karp and Erica D. Peterman had investigated the disappearance of my husband. And during this whole thing, I've never had the privilege of being able to know what the police have investigated and who they've talked to and what kinds of leads. They just don't share that with me or the press or anybody. But with the news, with media, they print what they find. And so it's been interesting to me to see, looking back on this today, and see what the story was that was written at the time when everybody's memory was fresh. So I'm going to read you this article, and don't worry, I do not do this throughout my diary. You don't see thousands and thousands of newspaper articles in my diary. You can go online and find those, and they're very easy to find by searching Wildlife on Easy Street or Big Cat Rescue or our names, all of that. So it starts out, this is dated September 21st, 1997. On the morning millionaire Jack Donald Lewis disappeared, he was wearing a $1 t-shirt from Kmart and blue jeans bought at a yard sale. He left behind an 8-year-old Dodge van with a broken window and a battered grill. He also left behind Wildlife on Easy Street, and then I put in parentheses, now known as Big Cat Rescue, the 40-acre sanctuary in northwest Hillsborough County, where he lived and kept more than 100 animals, from lions and leopards to llamas and lemurs. A month ago, authorities found the van, the keys on the floorboard, at a private airport in Pasco County, where Lewis, who has crashed planes in the past, was known to buy aircraft impulsively with cash. Lewis's disappearance has worried his friends and family, knotted his business affairs, and mystified law enforcement. Volunteers from his Big Cat Sanctuary have distributed more than 1,000 missing person flyers. A psychic has visited the house. His wife and his children from another marriage have squared off in court over his money, and the Hillsborough Sheriff's Department has taken a keen interest in his whereabouts. Detectives say that while there were no obvious signs of foul play, it hasn't been ruled out. On Wednesday, authorities received an unconfirmed report that Lewis, 59, was in Costa Rica, where he owns 200 acres near a volcano. They do not know if someone took him there, if someone killed him, or if he left on his own. He may have had reasons to go. In June, Lewis told a Hillsborough Circuit judge that his wife threatened to kill him, but the judge did not see a danger. That same month, he visited a psychiatrist at his wife's urging, but did not return for follow-up visits, she said. He's been his own man all his life, bootstrapping himself from Depression-era childhood to financial success through trucking and real estate. But his latest vocation, Wildlife on Easy Street, may have been bringing on more publicity and financial drain than the modest animal lover wanted. Lewis was born in Dade City to a single mother of 3 who sold fresh bread and worked as a seamstress. His father was a drunk she never married who used to ride the corpses out to the cemetery in a horse-drawn wagon. Fortunately, the horse knew the way there and back. His last name was never known to Don Lewis, who was born at an abortion clinic at 305 West South Avenue in Tampa, Florida. The doctor there was a friend of his crippled mother, and her later marriage to a man named Lewis was later attributed to Jack Donald. In high school, he had several jobs, including mechanic and farmhand. He graduated from Pasco High School a year ahead of schedule in 1955. He used to joke that the only school he ever graduated from was reform school. Girls adored him. He always seemed to know where he was going, said Gladys Cross, Lewis's first wife. The couple met at the A&P when Lewis, a bag boy, winked at her. 2 years after their first date, they married. She was 14. He was 17. 11 months after that, their first daughter, Donna, was born. "We were both so poor it was terrible," Gladys Cross said in a deposition last year. That would change. Lewis started hauling rock and sand in Dade City, then bought 5 dump trucks. In the early 1960s, he began driving tankers for Texaco and Red Wing carriers in Tampa. On the side, he bought washing machines, repaired them, and sold them at a profit. He invested in used cars, making money at auctions. His bank account swelled. He kept hustling as though he was still dirt poor, according to those who knew him. His East Broadway Avenue office was a trailer with newspapers covering the windows. His next big move was into real estate. While standing in line at a bank one day, he heard a banker exclaim that he would sell a $22,000 mortgage that was in foreclosure for 10 cents on the dollar. He asked his friend, Carole Stairs, to read the deal for him, as he could barely read, and they did the deal. Lewis and Stairs bought bad mortgages from other lenders, then let homeowners remain if they paid the 18% interest. If they made 6 house payments on time, he would sell the home back to them cheap. If not, he foreclosed. Most people who dealt with him were desperate, said Alvin Coulter of Brandon, a former business partner, but they went in with their eyes wide open. They were adults when they did it. Wendell Williams, another real estate investor who knows Lewis, said, "I don't want anyone to think Mr. Lewis was not ruthless, because he was." Regulatory agencies kept after him for housing code and environmental violations. He pleaded no contest in 1994 to dumping trash and burning it on land he owned in Seffner, records show. "He's got a notorious reputation around here," said Leslie Campbell, enforcement supervisor at the Hillsborough County, at the Hillsborough Environmental Protection Commission. Lewis eventually amassed holdings of some 350 parcels in 5 Florida counties, held under numerous names and trusts, according to property and court records. "They didn't want anybody to know about how much money they had," said Sheldon Wind, Lewis's longtime attorney, in a sworn deposition in 1996. The secrecy extended beyond his finances. For the first 3 years she knew him, Lewis used a different name, Bob Martin, and claimed to work for someone named Don Lewis. Carole Stairs, Lewis said. He didn't want her to love him for his money, she said. They met on the side of Hillsborough Avenue when she was 19. He saw her from his car as she walked along the road. He pulled over and asked her out. "I just fell in love with him at first sight," said Carole Stairs Lewis, now 36. They carried on an affair with Lewis for years before his divorce, she said. At some point, Gladys knew about that affair and others. She used to pack extra food in his lunch, and she knew it was for his girlfriends. They would leave love notes and lipstick-stained napkins in Lewis's lunchbox. This is not in the article, but I never did that. Don said Pam did that all the time, trying to get him in trouble. Lewis dated women younger than our daughters, Gladys Cross said. I couldn't compete with that. After 34 years, she asked for a divorce in 1990 when Gladys fell in love with a man named Cross and desired to marry him. That, too, involved secrecy, as the couple went to Sumter County to complete the split. Cross later sued Lewis in 1994, alleging that he had hidden the couple's wealth during the divorce and settled for $148,000. This isn't in there either, but that's news to me because I only remember him saying he had to pay her $50,000, so I don't know what this $148,000 was. A year after the divorce, Lewis married Carole Stairs at the Polk County Courthouse. She wore a tank top and a $14 wedding band Lewis bought at a pawn shop. Shortly after they married, the couple started Wildlife on Easy Street, a center for exotic cats set on the 40 acres of tall pines, high grass, and flowering bushes at the end of the dirt road at their home in Citrus Park. Today they take care of more than 1,000 lynx, ocelots, cougars, and leopards, as well as otters, lemurs, llamas, and horses. They nurse animals such as Nakoma, a lion who drags an injured hind leg, and promise to find the unwanted animals permanent homes. A lot of these animals had every reason in the world to hate you more than any other animal, said Al Cochran, a volunteer at the center, but Don found it in his heart to love them. Critics say that Lewis turned the refuge, which is organized as a Florida not-for-profit corporation, into another business. They say he bought cats cheaply at auctions and then sold them to buyers, impressed by the center's nonprofit status. That was a point of conflict between Don and I, Carole Lewis said. He wanted to sell the animals. She wanted to keep them. He would always say that everything had a price. The refuge's website said it lost money last year, and volunteers were organizing a fundraising golf tournament about the time of Lewis's disappearance. The commission's Lieutenant Dennis Parker said things have improved at the refuge. Lewis also had paperwork problems with the Federal Aviation Administration. Flying without a pilot's license in 1988, he hit some wires while landing at a crop duster strip near Pensacola during a storm. He failed to get a weather briefing before taking off, according to FAA records. He also failed to get a license. I don't know why that wasn't in there. If Lewis left intentionally, he didn't do much planning. His disappearance created a vacuum of power at his business enterprise and questions about who had authority to act in his absence. About 2 weeks ago, according to court records, Carole Lewis entered her husband's office on East Broadway. His children accused her of improperly taking documents and asked for a court order to keep her away. Carole Lewis responded with her own accusations, claiming in court documents that McQueen secretly has transferred $435,273.24 to her own name since May, when Don Lewis began traveling to Costa Rica. McQueen denied taking any money, saying Lewis always kept his assets under different names. "I have done nothing that Mr. Lewis did not instruct me to do," she said. "There is not a lot of trust there between all the parties involved," said Gail Rathbone, Lewis's daughter. A judge appointed a conservator to safeguard Lewis's estate, valued at more than $4 million, jointly with Carole. Carole Lewis suggested in court records that her husband's children are angry about being kept out of his will, something he did after the Gladys Cross 1994 lawsuit. The children supported Cross. "Kids always side with their mother," Carole Lewis said, even if it means turning on their dad. But the couple's own relationship became turbulent over the summer. On June 12th, Don Lewis petitioned for a domestic violence injunction against his wife, saying she had threatened to kill him. A judge found that Lewis was in no danger and denied the injunction. According to the records, the couple had fought over a pile of junk Lewis had collected at yard sales, his weekend passion. While Lewis was in Costa Rica, his wife paid someone to haul the pile away from the yard. Lewis was furious and sought the injunction. The fights no longer mattered to Carole. Her long blonde hair swept up in a cheetah print hairband, her eyes welling with tears. She said recently she wanted terribly to find Don. Wildlife volunteers also await his return. Said Susan Aronoff, a former volunteer, "I would like to think that Don is sitting on a remote island somewhere, laughing at us for being so worried about him." And then it says Times researchers Kitty Bennett and Barbara Oliver contributed to this story.